another crazy stat about Ivan Demidov comes from Grant McCagg this time. And, you know, we know he's super skilled offensively, Demidov, but this defensive stat ranks Demidov #1 among the top 100 prospects drafted this year. We're going to get into that and what it means for Demidov's future as a two-way star for Montreal. Plus, we have an unfortunate injury update. It's starting already as Raphael Harvey-Pinard has been injured, and it could potentially be serious, according to one source. So we're going to get into all of that coming up on this episode of Habs Digest, so stick around. The first thing, though, Jesse, I want to get into this, and this is an interesting article that was written, and I'm going to flash up the author in the article, and I'll link it down below. I recommend you guys go to check, but this could be better than we thought. And this article comes from Ryan Sporer, saying that the Canadiens realistically are on the rise in the Atlantic Division, and he talked about how there could be some potential to move up above teams like Detroit, Buffalo, and Ottawa. Now, again, it's not super likely, but if you look at the reasoning, like, for example, for Buffalo is one of the biggest examples why the Wings might not take it to the next level. Flashback to 2022-23, the Sabres only missed the playoffs by a single point, but then regressed when their guys just didn't quite get to that next level. Tage Thompson's 94 points went to 56. We know Detroit has lost some depth scoring, Jesse, but they did bring back Patrick Kane and brought in Vladimir Tarasenko. Their goalie situation isn't great, and when you look at Ottawa, they seem to have a great roster. They brought in a Vezina winner in Linus Ullmark, but there's been a lot of locker room issues. So all these things put together, I still don't think it's likely that Montreal jumps arguably any of these teams. I think the most likely outcome is Montreal finishes last or second last in the division. But, you know, when you look at how much we expect a lot of prospects to improve this coming year, maybe more impact from Hudson, from Slav, whatever, and you look at the goalies maybe taking a jump, you see Dach coming in for a full season, I don't think it's that crazy to start maybe overhyping ourselves, saying we can finish ahead of a few of these teams.
That's it. It's because the Habs really believe in a lot of their younger guys. And if you're somebody like Hudson, like Joshua Watt, et cetera, right? Like, that has to feel pretty good, right? Yeah. It's a lot better than a team not believing in their prospects, right? Especially considering how much effort has been invested into really getting such a big prospect pool, right? So they believe these guys and they want them to take that next step, and they're even creating a little bit of space for them, which has to feel good, right? Because if you're Joshua Watt, you're Lane Hudson, like, you feel, I probably should get rewarded for my good play, right? So the fact that they're kind of allowing some spaces to be available for them is huge, right? And it's going to be really interesting to watch for next year, right? There's whispers of people starting to question the Yzer plan a little bit, right? We know the Senators, they only finished 2 points ahead of us. Yeah. Definitely they saw their biggest issue in improving their goaltending, getting Ullmark, but they lost Tarasenko, they lost Chychrun, right? With Detroit, there's still questions on that decor, a little bit of an older decor. That goaltending is tandem's pretty old as well, while not necessarily being the best. We know Cam Talbot wasn't the answer for the Ottawa Senators. We'll see if he can do a little bit better in Detroit, but there's reasons to kind of question this. The Sabres, we know they've had such a long drought. I don't even know if we need to get into that. It's like, we're going to believe it when we see it, right? There's a lot of things you could say that the Montreal Canadiens are doing better than these other teams, right? Because the one thing with the Senators, again, we don't want to create too many rumors, but it's like the culture, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a big one. If you got an issue there, they're trying to bring in some vets, David Perron, et cetera, kind of help, probably a smart move to help take care of that. Is that enough? Because those are some fundamental things, and kind of culture starts with your leadership. It starts with your core, right? So it's kind of hard to take somebody from the periphery and kind of expect them to kind of change that. So that speaks to what the Montreal Canadiens are doing so well and why we can be excited for them to take that step up next year. We'll see exactly what that entails, but I think all Montreal Canadiens fans are definitely expecting a fairly large jump up in their production this year.
Yeah, for sure. And even if the Habs still finish last in the Atlantic this year, which I think is a very likely possibility, not all is lost, because making up some ground on these teams, maybe finishing a bit closer to them than expected, is going to be a huge, huge boost for this team, because there still needs to be a little more high-end talent brought into Montreal before I think they can really take that next step. And there's no rush. The thing is, like you said, Jesse, though, Montreal's doing a lot of things arguably better than these other teams. So when we're looking at the trajectories, Montreal is on, well, I guess this way, on a very upward trajectory, while these other teams are starting to stagnate just a little bit. So it's going to be very exciting. What do you guys think? Is Montreal going to finish last in the division? 5th, 6th, 7th? Leave your predictions down below for where Montreal finishes in the Atlantic this year. Maybe first, probably not. Let's move on to the next subject, and it's starting already, Jesse. I saw someone say RHP stands for rarely healthy player, and it made me laugh, but it also made me sad. Like, it's brutal when we're talking about Raphaël Harvey-Pinard. Like, this guy just can't catch a break. As according to Mathieu Paradis, he said exclusive, Raphaël Harvey-Pinard se serait blessé dans un événement sportif impliquant d'anciens l'actuel joueur de Rocket. So he was there with old and new players of the Rocket, and they said it's a lower body injury. But not only that, he said his sources mentioned that it seems serious and is the same leg as last year. Now, I want to start this with, I don't know how legitimate this is. I have not seen it reported by the Montreal Canadiens. Just take it for what it is. Mathieu Paradis has apparently some sources. He has a decent following on Twitter. He runs his own, hockey news thing as well. So let's assume it's true for now, Jesse, because it seems like not something you would just kind of make up. And I believe that game actually was something that happened. But Harvey-Pinard, if this is true and we run with that assumption for now, this is brutal, because if he's not ready, say, for training camp, or even if he is and he loses a few weeks here at training, this is one of the guys that's on the bubble for the roster, because there's a lot of guys who are going to want to make that jump into that forward core, or guys that are going to want to play a lot. He's one of those guys that's right on the fringe. He had such an amazing first call-up with Montreal, and regardless of his injury status, if he's healthy or not, like, I just want to see him do his best, because he honestly has worked so hard to get where he is, and I love watching him play when he's on, but man, this could be a rough go for him.
What was RHB doing playing in this game to begin with, right? It was like past AHL players versus current. It's like he's in the NHL right now. That's what he needs to be focused on. That being said, I really love the player too. Hard to see him not kind of catching those breaks there. His situation, as he mentioned, was like precarious to begin with before even this injury, right? But if there's one thing we know about RHB, is that he has an unreal work ethic, right? That's why we like this player. That's why we believe in him. He's also got some skill there as well, right? So there's one thing we know, that he's going to just put that full effort into really securing his spot back again. But at the same time, like, it's, his position with the Montreal Canadiens is starting to become in question just a little bit.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Again, well, as we get more details on this, I'm sure we'll let you guys know. But for now, hopefully he's okay. Hopefully it's not serious. Again, just some sources. We'll see as it happens, but really wish the best for Harvey-Pinard. I'd love to see him play some games next season and get back to that goal-scoring self that he had when he was first called up. Final thing, Jesse, though. We got to talk a little bit about Demidov, because there's never enough Demidov. And this tweet is actually a few days old. Only saw this recently, though, and I don't know if other places covered this, but hey, even if they did, you're going to get a double dose of it here, because it's a really, really neat stat. And I want to bring this up from Grant McCagg. He said the most underrated part of Demidov's game is his defensive play. In 46 MHL games, he was on the ice for 0.24 goals against per game. I have never seen a percentage that low. It wasn't just because the team allowed few goals against either. Every 60 minutes, he was on the ice for about one full goal fewer against than the team. His goals differential among the top 100 prospects in the 2024 draft was the best. This is crazy. So I know, like, it's one season sample size of this kind of stat. It's hard to pin right on one player, but you can't deny that, like, these stats do mean something. And like we've seen, Jesse, while Demidov is not that guy, he has a great motor, but he's not that guy that's always the first one back, always hustling back, using all his energy, because he's smart. You can't use all your energy getting back on defense and expect to be able to have a bunch of energy on the offensive side as well. He's very good at picking and choosing when to put in that effort, but his defensive game is very smart, and it does get underrated when you watch his highlights. He knows when to try and intercept passes. He knows when to go for, like, little subtle plays here and there. So to hear this stat, this one that I hadn't heard, maybe some of the fans have, but that is crazy to me how good his goal differential was, and I think it bodes very well for his potential two-way game with Montreal. Are we seeing maybe a penalty kill in the future? Maybe that's a bit far, but I don't know.
Right? An amazing offensive player, but defensively solid as well, and he doesn't cheat. Defensively to allow for his offense to really take off. This is an incredible stat. It's basically saying that over 75% of the time when the team scored against SKA or against his MHL team, that he was not on the ice. Like, that is absolutely unreal, right? Because this was already a good defensive team to begin with. For sure, the level of competition a little bit less in the MHL, but he was the best defensive player on an already very good defensive team. That's just absolutely so amazing to see, just for his overall progression, right? Like, when we start looking at it, right, like, okay, in a lot of ways you could say maybe can be better offensively than Celebrini. When you start throwing in how he really plays all three zones of the ice so well, it's like, Josh, I know we might be getting ahead of ourselves, and time will definitely be the judge of this. 5 years will need to come back.
Absolutely.
But I honestly think that Demidov can be a better prospect than Macklin Celebrini.
I don't think it's crazy to say that he could be. I think going into this draft, it's very right to have Celebrini at number 1. But what we're saying is Demidov has those tools, right? And him going at 5, like the Habs brass said, like, is steal of the draft, really, right? Like, when you look at it, like, for the talent you're getting, for the two-way play, the three-zone play you're getting with Demidov, a guy who can be the guy on your power play, the guy who has that point-per-game potential in the NHL, but also has some untapped, maybe not even untapped, semi-tapped defensive upside, on a team like Montreal, who has done a really good job of developing their forwards defensively. Look at what Caufield's strides have been defensively this season. I think it bodes really well for Demidov's future. Let us know about what you think of Demidov's defense down below. Does this stat surprise you? Because it kind of caught us a bit off guard, but hey, we absolutely love it and hope it manifests itself in the very near future. But that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Thank you all so much for watching every single day. And don't forget, if you're still watching at this point in the video, tune into the live stream tomorrow, 6:15 p.m. Eastern. We got a lot of great stuff coming. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.